It is time to face certain realities of the globally competitive 21st century. All communities in public post secondary education need to understand what is involved in creating a diverse workforce. This needs to begin by emphasizing the students that will become the workforce throughout the rest of the 21st century. We need to understand their strengths, capabilities, and use that guide them and into the skills that the communities need to compete in the global marketplace. This implies that post secondary standards need to be based on the needs of the community, not Common Core or parochial standards. This is actually good news because not all employees need to do calculus or write like Hemingway, but the needs of the community is far more diverse than the narrowly defined Common Core or whatever the diocese of the Catholic Church is prevalent in whatever communities a public post secondary institution serves. It is also important to note that it remains important that the communication skills provided in the creation of a sentence or some form of paragraph will be necessary even at the most elementary levels. It is also understood that it might not be necessary for most of the community does not need to understand calculus. It is still important that they can use a calculator and whatever computer appropriate computer equipment. As students graduate high school, the challenge is different in preparing students for the 21st century, and we need to begin by understanding and supporting them through this process. In this case, of a public case of post-secondary academic, we need to facilitate a wide range of skills that are not provided through a strictly profit-based learning institution or one that has some religious or other goal. We need to focus on the diverse needs of the community while working with other post-secondary academic institutions throughout the course of a student's career slash life. We need to understand the needs of the students and the community that will change throughout the 21st century. We need to be flexible, both with our students and the community, which does not include profit, academic, and religious institutions, among others. We face the challenge of preparing students for the challenges of the 21st century. The greatest need for this is not the students, but the community at large. We need to provide the skills and knowledge needed in a large, diverse workforce to properly operate the global 21st century. The real challenge in the communities we serve is not who need new blood with an increase those who need new blood with an increasingly wide skills that are wielded by trusted, hardworking new employees who are just as eager to compete in general global economy as anyone. The most difficult challenges the community have is in developing new expertise for the evolving skills that are needed as we move forward throughout the 21st century. We need to approach the challenge from the perspective of the employer, particularly businesses of all sizes that approaches every new and old employee assets to develop complete competitive within the rest of the world with the rest of the world. This is done in an extremely dynamic environment where it is difficult to understand success or failure. In this environment, every employee, even the leader, is evaluated as an asset to be developed as necessary for the challenge of the organization. Even if training could be handled in-house, it is still important to look at various post-secondary institutions to provide the training needed. Regardless of the concept of the cost of effectiveness, there are times when it is prudent for companies to need the same skills for companies to pool their resources, and public post-secondary learning institution like community college are a convenient resource for that purpose. At some point in figuring out of how the rest of the 21st century progresses, we need to ask where the challenges of the 21st century are coming from. In moving beyond the multitude of factors, we need to understand this is not a top-down process. The changes are coming from all over in some think tank in Beijing, Moscow, or even Harvard/Washington D.C. Or is that New York City? As we go further answering this question, we can find out that the answer comes from sources more vast and diverse than the students and communities we serve. Part of the answer to where change is from our students themselves, even before they finish their education certificates. This reality can change the dynamic of how we educate our students into the future that they will live in, as far as well as demystify and empower our students to go boldly and thrive. Facing the challenge of preparing post secondary students for the 21st century, a three-step process. In understanding and developing students in a post secondary environment, we need to discard the past and emphasize the future. High school is past, be it yesterday or 1982. The students come with their skills, interests, and abilities, no matter when or how they were acquired. The first thing we need to do is assess these skills and interests. This is why most important class to give students is an ATD compatibility model or some equivalent, and begin the process in which the students will choose their path, whatever career that student needs to choose themselves. We are just guides. Everyone is better off this way, especially employees who get a student more willing to perform when they know and understand and what they're doing well. The ATD can also identify what skills a student needs, and we can work with them to elevate those skills. This is the first step in the process of professional development or lifelong learning, the process that needs to be performed during the first semester of a student's enrollment. We must start the process of a relationship between students and institution in the recruiting process and continue through the course of whatever career the students have chosen for themselves. This process continues with a first semester curriculum that identifies the student and abilities that allows the student understanding of what is realistic for them in a diverse workforce. This process also must identify potential gaps or weaknesses that need to be addressed. For example, a student nursing student might find certain math skills might need certain math skills, while others being an excellent candidate for a career in the medical field. The process must be done with the understanding that students must understand the dynamic nature of the 21st century so they can be flexible enough to adapt to the changes. Long after the student has left the institution in any such class, we need to ask or rethink the purpose of the class as well as the purpose of the curriculum in place. We need to understand that the community needs a wide variety of skills in its workforce, much more than any 4 year degree can accommodate. This is a matter of determining a student's place in this diverse workforce rather than concentrating on what Stanford determines to be best. We need to explore the design of a class that explores the skills and interests of its students. It's important to consider that multiple intelligence of each student. We need to at least be aware of the evolving nature of career management, or however this field is labeled. Any method of testing for a student intelligence or skill will someday be as outdated as what color is your parachute or the ASVAB. Even the theories of Howard Gardner multiple intelligence can be a thing of the past. With this in mind, we must start somewhere and be aware of the changing nature of both the communities we serve and especially our students. This must be done in a way that we can do our own theories to respect. Even the ASVAB was thought to be state of the art. We also need to address how a student learns based on what type of learning they prefer to learn. Also, students need to work up to a post secondary or professional level. This is even more challenging in an online environment where content needs to be managed differently. We need to do more than leave them in their own isolation. Of course, any student who needs to understand this might be their only opportunity and need to work harder. However, we need to explore how students learn and find creative ways to bring students up to the same professional standards that other students face. The second step in this process is to face the challenge of getting through to the finish whatever program that is selected or alternate program that is mutually decided upon by all involved. It is best that we plan to face this as the student as an online learner because this is the most challenging way to do this. It is also practical because some students with student problems are not willing to admit them and seek help in such a way that where the student is not important. The key to this follow through is what might be when we contact the student. However, it may be the difference between a student's success or returning to some MIC job. There are several other models that can be used in what is known as the University of Maryland Global Campus or other public institutions. The factors that lead to success are as diverse as the students themselves. It is doubtful we can determine the best method for success. However, we must try through research on both success, graduations, and failures, students dropping out or failing. In this dynamic 21st century, students leaving whatever post-secondary accoutrement is not the end of the journey. Take your pick, professional development or lifelong learning. Perhaps the World Bank does not have it right in its definition. The key is the world changes, as do our students. They will continue to develop on the job no matter where they are or in the hierarchical chart. And they will have ideas that can improve business, industry, and the community. At times, it might be essential that they return to school to learn new skills that become important for whatever reason. There is also times that a student has become the teacher throughout their understanding of their job/career. We need to incorporate this as well as facilitate their ascension regardless of whatever institution that is chosen for their progress. This final guidance might be the most important part of this process. It is here we have a chance to master the dynamic 21st century rather than riding the capricious waves of time.